Hello, everyone. This is Ashley. I just wanted to check in and make sure I have the board members listed and know who's in attendance. Right now, I have Matt Mason, Hans, Mary Ellen, Jim, and Carol. Is there anyone else from the board on? Okay, we'll wait a few more minutes. Okay, I'm just checking in one more time. On the call right now, I have Matt Mason, Hans, Mary Ellen, Jim, Carol, and Rachel Yanoff. Is that correct? Anyone else? Madam President, at this time, you do have a quorum, and you may start the meeting.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. And first, we're going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now if we could just take a moment of silence. All right, thank you so much. And Ashley, are you going to do the roll call one more time? Or are we good to continue?
Alexis will need to do the roll call.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you, Alexis.
President Lee,
Here.
Vice President Close,
Here.
Superintendent Hoffman, Dr. Crockett,
Here.
Mr. Mason, Mr. Mason,
Present.
Ms. Rice, Mr. Swanson,
Present.
Mr. Twist, Ms. Yana, Ms. Yana, I'm sorry, Ms. Yana,
Rachel
President
did
Lee.
indicate that she was on, 1 second. She had internet issues, so she's calling back in, so we'll need to wait a second to get quorum. Okay, Rachel, are you on? Rachel, are you on the meeting now?
Hi, everyone. This is Rachel Yanoff. I'm here.
President Lee, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. Just a couple of housekeeping items regarding virtual meetings. Board members, if you could please stay muted. And after each agenda item, Ashley will go through the roll call to see if any member has a comment or question. This will just help to make sure that we're not talking over each other. Also, just a reminder to please state your name before you speak. Charters who are on the agenda today, please stay muted until the item is considered, and then Ashley will ask if the charter is available, and if so, the charter can unmute themselves at that time. The general public is viewing this meeting via live stream or if called in via Zoom and will be muted. Thank you just again, everybody, for doing this virtually. And it looks like we have quite a few people in attendance, and so we really appreciate that. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Ashley, did we have anything from the superintendent to read, or was a designee here? I don't believe Superintendent Hoffman was able to make it to the actual meeting.
No, Madam President, we do not have anything to report for the superintendent's report.
Okay, well, we will move on. All right, Ashley, Executive Director's Report. Do you have anything for us?
I do, and thank you, Madam President and board members. I wanted to give a brief update to each of you regarding the governor's recently released executive orders, 2020-41 and then 2020-44. With each of those executive orders, the board has worked in collaboration with other state leaders to assist in the reopening of schools for this upcoming school year. Specifically for the Executive Order 41, that executive order does allow for charters and districts to have the flexibility to instruct via distance learning without having an approved AOI. With that additional flexibility does come the requirement that schools, if they are wanting to utilize distance learning, so that's learning outside of the classroom, that they must submit to the charter board their distance learning plan. The distance learning plan for charters was sent out to charters last week, and we are working with each individual charter. So the education program managers have reached out to each charter to help facilitate the submission of that distance learning plan. The distance learning plan is the same as was provided to district schools. However, districts will submit their learning plan to the Department of Education, and charters will submit their distance learning plan to the State Board for Charter Schools. So, well, one, I should definitely give some credit to the department. It was really great working with them. It was a good collaboration working with them on that distance learning plan. And I feel that what was put out for the charters does really indicate and is in a true template that the charters are used to. It mirrors our processes that we've used in the past, and it does allow for charters to provide the information and really tell their story as to how they are serving their community. The distance learning plan, as it was stated in the executive order, is not prescriptive. We are allowing the schools to tell us their plan, and then the board has a responsibility later on to go and evaluate that. But in the initial submission, the board is just looking for completeness. So making sure that the charters that submit that distance learning plan, that they have provided information in each of the 7 criteria items. The board staff will bring to the board for your consideration at the August meeting the schedule for evaluation. So in Executive Order 41, it did require the board, or does require the board to approve prior to September 1, a plan and schedule for evaluation of those plans. This is separate from the completion check. The executive order only requires that the board evaluate a sampling. However, working with board staff, we do feel like we have the ability, and it is important to evaluate every school's distance learning plan. So what we will do at the August 10th meeting is we will bring to you a schedule to review every single school's distance learning plan throughout the year. And that review will definitely be different. We'll use our current processes for some schools that in doing their evaluation. Some will be a desk review and some will be an on-site, depending on what the availability is for next year. But that will be going to you for consideration at the August meeting. The Executive Order 44 that came out, it in essence pushes back the reopening of in-classroom instruction until August 17th. That does not mean that instruction cannot happen. So before that. So schools are implementing distance learning and may implement distance learning prior to that August 17th timeframe. The governor did say, however, last week that he will likely be issuing additional guidance later this week about the reopening of schools. Once that information is provided to the public, the board will make sure to appropriately communicate that to its charters and to the board for additional consideration. Are there any questions from board members on the executive orders? Okay. Moving on to the update on the financial performance framework underneath the executive director's report. Pursuant to board's financial performance framework and rules, a charter holder that received an intervention rating based on the fiscal year 2019 audit must submit to the board an initial financial response and 4 quarterly financial reports by July 30th of 2020. This report is considered when determining an intervention charter holder's probation status. Under the board's rules, board staff may grant an extension for the July 30 deadline. In light of COVID-19's impact on school operations and the governor's recent executive orders regarding the reopening of schools for the upcoming academic year, on July 2nd, board staff extended the June 30 report submission deadline to August 17th. This new deadline provides a flexibility and additional time for schools dealing with the uncertainty and complexity of COVID-19 and does allow the board the ability to ensure the financial stability of its schools. At this time, the board continues to get additional feedback and information from charters pertaining to the board's financial performance framework. And we will be updating the board and the financial framework later on this year based on that feedback. Madam President, that is all I have to report at this time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. And just thank you just to all the board staff. You guys really, turned these documents around quickly. And I've gotten feedback even from other charters of just how concise and easy was probably maybe not the right word, but it's the word I'm going to use just to fill out and be able to get that information back to you guys without too much of a burden. And so I just really appreciate you guys responding so quickly. All right. Going to call to the public. So typically this is the time for the public to comment and we'd invite them up. However, public comments were received and they have been placed in the board materials for review. So anybody who'd like to review those, please go ahead and you can visit the website and review those. Moving on to item G, the consent agenda. Is there anybody that wanted to pull something off of the consent agenda? And if not, could we have a motion?
This is Hans. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Hans. Is there a second?
This is Rachel, second.
Thank you, Rachel. Alexis, if you could do the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you. All right, moving on to item H, charter amendments. And Rachel, I believe you're going to be presenting those. And are we starting? I apologize. We are going to take them in order. Yes. Okay. So H1, Freedom Prep Academy.
Yep. So President Lee, Vice President Close, board members, Freedom Prep Academy Mesa has submitted an amendment request to increase the grades served at its school. The charter holder was granted a new charter in December of 2019 and will open its school serving students through an AOI in August of 2020. The charter holder's rationale for this request is to meet the needs of families seeking an online option for 2020-2021 and to accommodate the large number of students who have pre-enrolled. At the December 2019 meeting, the board approved the new charter application for this charter holder. The application indicated that the school would open serving 60 students in grades 7 and 8 in year 1, 7 through 10 in year 2, and 7 through 11 in year 3. The board's motion language indicated that the charter had an enrollment cap of 60 in year 1, 300 in year 2, 540 in year 3, and 720 each year afterward, beginning in year 4. This motion language was consistent with the submitted application. At this time, the charter holder has requested that it be able to expand its operations significantly beyond the plan outlined for the first 3 years of the new charter application, including the addition of serving grades 1 through 6 in its first year of operation and serving 330 students in year 1. In the evaluation of the new charter application, the TRP only reviews operational and business plans for the first 3 years. Therefore, components such as personnel, contracted services, and budgeting were not reviewed in relation to grades 1 through 6.
And Madam President and board members, this typically is an amendment request. The school specific change in grades amendment request is typically a request that as the executive director, I may approve. However, because this is a drastic deviation from the new charter application that was previously approved by the board in December, I'm bringing it to you for your consideration.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. And do we have the charter representative here?
Yes, this is Sterling Kellis with Freedom Prep Academy.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming. Is there any, did you want to make a statement before we ask if there's any specific questions for you?
Sure, yes. And President Lee, members of the board, I'm happy to be here representing Freedom Prep. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. I'm happy to answer any specific questions. Maybe just by way of a kind of a brief background. As most of you know, we were unanimously approved by the board in December, as Rachel mentioned, to serve grades K-12 via AOI. In our business plan, we listed that our year 1 projected enrollment would be a conservative 60 students in just grades 7 and 8. This number, it was never intended to be a cap or a ceiling, but rather a floor for our school, a minimum break-even point that we could confidently hit and exceed. And we spoke to this in our TRP interview. This is why when the board's language included yearly maximum caps, which had not been done in prior years, we were surprised as it was never mentioned in the application as far as annual caps had never been a part of, like I said, the prior year's language. Of course, Rachel had been extremely helpful throughout our application process, so I personally reached out to her for clarification, and on December 5th, we had a really good conversation in which she acknowledged that the term projected enrollment in the 2019 application was rather unclear and would likely be changed to maximum enrollment for future applicants, and note that has since been changed with the new application. She also helped alleviate our concerns by explaining that we have the option to operate within our charter's approved grade range, so long as we remained within our 3-year enrollment cap of 540 students, and communicated with board staff. So we have since been planning and preparing and operating under these assumptions. We purchased software and licensed curriculum to serve up to 500 AOI students. Based on these assumptions, we found employees and contracted with partners based on these assumptions. We've made marketing and web development decisions, expanded our course offerings. We've secured facilities and on and on. So as you can imagine, these decisions have come at a significant investment, which is why limiting our cap to just 60 students in 2 grades at this point would be detrimental to our school. We have well exceeded that. We have a waiting list of almost, well, let's see, we have over 200 pre-enrolled and interested students. So of course, as it states in our rationale, there is a huge demand, especially right now, for distance learning solutions. Recent polls show that over 44% of Arizona students are considering distance learning, and there's only a limited number of AOI providers. So as one of Arizona's few authorized K-12 AOI providers, we would greatly benefit Arizona students and families by serving this wider range of grades in this time of need. We're also uniquely equipped to serve these K-12 students, or specifically 1 through 11 in grades 1 through 3, or I'm sorry, in years 1 through 3. At the same time, we understand the board's need to ensure operators have capacity to serve their students. And in accordance with our operating plan and bylaws, we've carefully considered our academic and operational and business plans to ensure that we can effectively serve all of our students. I believe that there are quite a few parents that wrote in during the public comments. I know that there are quite a few more that wanted to attend this meeting, but with the short notice and the change, they weren't able to submit their comments. But there are many parents and students and siblings of our enrolled students that would greatly benefit from this. As I mentioned, we have a fully built curriculum for the grades that we're intending to serve. We have the staff to be able to do so. We've outlined that in our rationale and our plan. And that's just some background. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has at this time.
Great, thank you. Board members, are there any questions?
President Lee, this is Carol Crockett. I have a question.
Please.
You indicated that you have the staff, and yet it sounds as though we don't see the personnel that's required. Can you add to that information when you say you have adequate staff?
Sure, and just so I understand, can you clarify what you mean by not having the personnel?
Well, I mean, for this large expansion, have you contracted with additional people to provide?
Yes, great question. The answer is yes, we have. As I mentioned, we have been already operating under the assumption that we could operate in accordance with our year 2 plan rather than our year 1 plan. So we have contracted and partnered and hired staff to be able to meet those needs. And that's presented in the staffing plan. We have 2 administrators, we have instructors, 5.5, we have special education personnel, we also have guides, or coaches is what we call them, or teaching assistants, 11 of those, as well as an office manager or a registrar. So we are well equipped to be able to serve those students.
So, President Lee, just an additional question to staff. Is that your understanding then as well, that there's sufficient personnel?
In the plan in which he submitted the amendment, Mr. Kellis did submit a staffing chart that demonstrates his staffing. The staffing chart provided in that amendment is fairly consistent with what his plan was in his new charter application for year 2. Additionally, this is an AOI program. Therefore, their staffing needs are a bit decreased from what a traditional brick and mortar school would require to serve that number of students. But yes, in our review of the staffing plan, it was fairly consistent with the year 2 and 3 plan that was reviewed by the TRP, with the exception of the fact that the TRP would not have reviewed it for that 1st through 6th grade staffing due to the fact that they only review budgets and staffing for the first 3 years indicated in the application.
Thank you.
I just have this is Mary Ellen Lee. I just have a question. When you say that you're adequately staffed, are you adequately staffed 1st through 11th grade or 7th through 11th grade?
We're adequately staffed for 1st through 11th grade. As you can see there from our enrollment projections, and we do grade level clusters. So 1 through 2, or actually K through 2, even though we don't intend to serve K, that wasn't part of our amendment request, but 1 through 2, and then 3 through 5, and then 6 through 8, and then the higher grades would be individually after that. But as far as that, yes, we are staffed to serve those lower grades, even though those are reduced numbers. And again, our model was aimed at kind of middle school students and then growing up and down from there. Maybe if I could, I'll just color out a bit as far as why it was just aimed at such a low number in our year 1 projection. We anticipated using year 1 as a planning and development year, as many charters do, funded in part by the ASBCS grant. When the board language approved our school as an AOI only school, which actually wasn't our intent in the application, that made us ineligible for the ASIP grant. So as a result of that, we, as I mentioned prior, based off of our conversation with Rachel, we decided to move forward and focus on our year 2. We've since established a model where we've already been teaching students. We've already done AOI summer school. We've had excellent response, excellent support from our parents. And now with parents who have already been in our program, they're asking if their other siblings of their children can attend, or their other children can attend as well. So we have, yes, we have found in response to your question, we have contracted with additional coaches and teaching assistants, as well as staff to be able to serve those younger grades. Even though, like I said, it's a smaller enrollment of roughly about 15 in those young grades, we do have some what we call micro schools that are interested in that type of offering. And as I mentioned before, with our curriculum, we have partnered with a number of providers. And then we've also developed our own curriculum where we have over 70,000 videos for all of the different grade levels spanning from K through 12. And we've had excellent feedback and excellent results with those. And you can see some of those from the parents that submitted public comments. Even for some of the gifted students, as well as the special needs students, how they've really been able to excel. And one thing that we didn't necessarily anticipate on the onset was that a lot of small towns throughout Arizona, maybe they don't have the type of resources that some of the larger cities have seen or experienced. They've tremendously benefited, including Sholo and Sierra Vista, White River, and some of the other places that they may not have as strong of schools, and they are asking for our curriculum and our offerings to come into their cities.
So can you confirm, are you going to have to let teachers go if we don't approve the 1st through 6th grades?
We would have to make some pretty significant adjustments because we have expenditures and capital outlays that we've already planned on, but we are doing the best that we can. We have a talented leadership team that can evaluate that. But I think we've all heard the saying as far as build your plan or plan your work and then work your plan. That's kind of our model as we've gone through this. At the same time, we are flexible and we're trying to do the best we can. But yes, President, in short, we'd have to make some pretty significant adjustment and probably let some staff know that they would not be able to serve those grades or work with us in year one if we were reduced to that number of grades and that number of students.
Okay.
President Lee,
Yes.
this is Jim Swanson, and maybe a question to staff. So, and I apologize, I'm just a little bit confused and I want to understand. So 6 or 7 months ago, we approved a charter to allow you for 2 grades up to 60 students, but you're here saying, the way I'm listening is, I'm not sure why you're here. You're saying your charter allows you to do this, but you're in front of us anyways. Where is the lack of clarity on what we did in December versus what you think you want to do now? And I think that may be first to staff and then back to the charter holder, I guess.
Member Swanson, President Lee, just to make sure this is really clear. So yes, the charter is approved for those full grade levels at the charter level. However, when the charter went through the new application, what typically occurs is the application is approved for a 3-year plan. And that 3-year plan is what we hold schools accountable to for those first 3 years. Typically, if a school comes to, so right now the school itself is approved to serve grades 7 and 8. If this school came to me and asked for a school specific change in grades to go in the first year to serve grades 7 through 11, that is very consistent with what we have done in the past. We have allowed for the flexibility within the first 3 years to mirror what the new charter application indicated for those first 3 years. In the board motion language, the board at its December meeting specifically determined the enrollment caps for a slow growth model based on the projections of the schools that came in front of it for the new charter applications. So in the board motion language, the board members did specifically outline that although the school was approved for an additional enrollment cap, that it would be a slow growth increase to that full enrollment. So for this school, it was 60 students in the first year that they were. So the school is asking to deviate from that 3-year plan from starting in 7th and 8th grade and moving to 11th grade by that 3rd year, and now including grades 1 through 6. As the executive director for I am not, that is a deviation from our current internal processes, and I do not feel comfortable approving that. I think it's a board discussion and consideration. And same with the enrollment cap, that the board specifically outlined in its board motion language that the school for its first year of operation could only instruct 60 students. And I believe, I know there was a question about the AOI piece as well. This school is approved as an AOI, and when the schools go in front of us for a new charter application, if they are wanting an online portion, they must be an online school, and that is consistent with statute. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
So Ashley, Member Swanson, if I may, I'm going to actually share a page from the new charter application to kind of outline what we're sharing with you right now. So if you guys can see my screen here, this is from, I believe this is section C3, the personnel section of the new charter application that was approved. And as you can see here, Mr. Kellis in his application outlined that he was planning to serve AOI only in year one. Yes.
I'm sorry, we can't see, or at least I can't see what you're sharing, so I just didn't want to get too far without us being able
Okay, let me give this a second. Dan, if you're listening, there may be something you need to do on your end.
Unless I'm the only one that can't see it.
No, it sounds like no one can see
Oh,
it.
okay, okay. It could be.
It could be just you, but I don't think it is. Let me stop. Let me try again. Okay, let me see if this works. Any luck there?
I still just see the.
Okay. So if I may see if Dan can share this with you, but essentially there's a chart in his application that shows for year one, he's going to serve 37th grade students and 38th grade students. And the chart very clearly has an AOI column and a brick and mortar, a campus column. Mm-hmm. The AOI column is the only column in year one that had any numbers in it. Therefore, demonstrating to staff and to the TRP that the intention for year one was AOI only. As for the second year, in the second year, his application indicated he was going to serve AOI as well as campus. And that was consistent with the facilities documentation that were provided in this application in the facilities section and other sections of the application as well. So based on that, the understanding of the application review team and others that looked at this application was we're going to be AOI in year one. We're going to add the brick and mortar component in year two. Additionally, we're going to stay with the 7-8 in year one at 60 students. And that's what this application was reviewed as and approved as, which is why the AOI language was included in the motion language, the same as it would have been for any applicant that included an AOI as a component of their package. To add to that, Mr. Kellis did have an AOI package that was reviewed by Rio Salato, very similar to what you will see with your AOI amendments today.
So can you confirm, the representative from the charter, were you teaching students outside of this grade level band that we approved you for this summer? Because there was one parent that wrote in, I believe, that said their 6th grade student was attending your school and you're only approved 7 through 11.
Yeah, that's correct. So we did a pilot program to be able to test out some of our lower grades. Those were not run through the state at all. Those were offered for free to our parents and also some of the siblings of our students that were attending the school so they could experience and also we could pilot out our program. And to Rachel's point, I'm sorry, I'll pause on that. Ashley, did you have any additional follow-up question on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. And I completely agree with what Rachel is showing here. As I mentioned in the beginning, Rachel, if you don't mind sharing that screen again, I think that helps clarify what we were saying as well.
I didn't know it was working. I'll put it up.
Yeah.
So to my knowledge and understanding, we are the only charter beginning this year because most charters opted that were approved last year to use the year one as a planning and development year. As I mentioned, that was initially our intent as well. But as we added on the AOI add-on, we decided as a leadership team that it would probably be good to do a soft launch with our online curriculum. So in year one, we showed that we could manage, as we were building out our campus and our facilities, we could manage a small cohort of students in middle school. So that was the intent. And I mean, I think just to borrow from a sports analogy, I think, if any team is going up to a line of scrimmage, they have a play that's already been called by the quarterback. But at the same time, they have many other options that they've rehearsed if they need to call an audible based off of the defense or what they're seeing. And that's kind of what happened here, where when the board language approved us as an AOI only school, that kind of threw off our plans of being an applicant as a brick and mortar school that would allow us to qualify for the ASIP grant. We'd already gone through that application. So being deemed ineligible for that because we were now an AOI only school, that forced us to reconsider what we were planning on doing. And as I mentioned, historically, these decisions are left at the leadership team and not typically done at the board, at least from my understanding. I've read through and I've reviewed pretty much every single application that's been approved over the past 5 years. And this was the first year that the board delineated each year what the enrollment cap would be. So as I mentioned, that's why I reached out to Ms. Hannah, and we had that clarification that, okay, yes, if we had the demand, if we had the need, we could push forward and start in year 2 and enroll students. So that's what we've been operating under the assumption. We'd opted not to do that soft launch, not to start extremely conservatively. And it's actually worked out extremely well. Despite the frustrations of the whole COVID-19 situation, there have been a lot of parents and students that have really appreciated our offerings. And even now, as we've had to turn off all of our marketing efforts until we waited for this response from the board, we still continue to get parents by word of mouth who are very, very interested in attending. As I mentioned, we've more than tripled our enrollment cap with just that 60 students in those 2 grades. So what we're asking for is not a substantive change to our charter application. As I mentioned, we were approved, as Ashley and Rachel mentioned, we were approved to serve K-12. We've demonstrated that through our charter application, our capacity interview. We scored a perfect score on the curriculum samples for the younger grades that we're wanting to teach. We scored a perfect score for the AOI portion that was reviewed by Rio Salado. So we aren't asking to make a substantive change. It's really a timeline change that we're looking at to be able to move forward a little bit earlier, as so many schools right now are also making similar type adjustments where they're having to respond to this unprecedented situation right now with COVID-19. And we're trying to find a way to best serve our students. And of course, as the board knows, there's 1.1 million students in Arizona. We're asking to be able to serve a small number of those. And we believe that we've demonstrated that we are more than able to be able to do that here in year 1. And we already have the enrollment for students that have signed up for that.
Rachel, can you confirm, because I guess it was my understanding the TRP reviewed them for 7 through 11 or 7 through 12, not a K through 12.
So to clarify that, the TRP would have reviewed the instructional analysis documents, the academic documents for grades K through 12. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been approved for a K-12 charter. The AOI package was also reviewed for K-12. So from an academic perspective, the application package was reviewed for K-12. However, from an operational and business perspective, it would have only been reviewed for grades 7 through 11 because it only allows an applicant to project out 3 years. And that is all that this applicant projected out for the first 3 years.
Right. So I guess my board, I guess I don't know where you guys are at. My concern is that we have an application that came through that was vetted by the TRP, and it sounds like maybe academically, K-12, but not in those 2 other areas. And so I know that when these new schools come before us, we really rely heavily on the TRP recommendation. And so this would be somewhat unprecedented, in my opinion, in regards to approving a plan, approving a school that's never, that hasn't been in operation fully yet, and hasn't been vetted by the TRP in 2 areas for grades, for this new model. And so that's where I have some major concerns with. I absolutely can understand that COVID, just this time would push an enrollment cap and maybe even the understanding for that. And I would be willing to look at a potential enrollment cap increase of maybe that second year, the 300 students. It sounded like you had 200 students on your wait list. But I personally don't feel comfortable and just don't think it's what we've ever done. You could find a case that we've ever historically changed what the TRP has reviewed without any evidence of having an actual school year under your belt. I think that's what, you kind of have against you, is that, sometimes we have charters come back the next year, but they have data to show us, they have test scores, they have, different things, letters from parents who have been in the program, things like that. And unfortunately, I just don't see that right now. But I'd be curious to see where the rest of the board members stand.
And President Lee, if I could just make a comment on that. Oh, I'm sorry. If anybody else wanted to comment first, go ahead.
Board members, are there any comments?
President Lee, this is Carol Crockett, and not necessarily a comment, but Mr. Kellis, another question to clarify.
Yes.
Still not sure of your instructional capacity. You show 3 instructors for your first year of operation, and I think 15 for the second. Is that right? And yet, and so how many have you actually hired now, if you were to do what you want to do?
Just to clarify, where are you seeing that it shows 3 instructors? Or are you looking at the original plan from the information that Rachel shared?
Yes, correct. Sorry.
Okay, so in the revised staffing plan that was submitted in the narrative, you can see there how we've updated that. And we have a unique model that's worked extremely well for our students, where we assign each of our students 4 different instructors, is what we call them. So it's central to our philosophy. It's outlined in our application, but at the center of that learning model is the student. We define them as a teacher so that they are proactively engaged in their own learning process. And we also assign them a master teacher. So this is really where our technology excels. This is somebody who is a subject matter expert in the material that they're learning, but they've been vetted as far as being extremely skilled in explaining concepts to simplify them. And these master's teachers, we've recorded, like I said, over 70,000 pre-recorded videos. They're usually taught in short burst learning models, about 7 minutes each. So this really helps students of all grades be able to understand the content. But in addition to that master teacher, we assign each student an instructor. So that instructor would be that one that you're looking at, where we have 5.5 instructors in year 1. That's in a ratio of about 60-1, pretty similar with a junior high teacher as far as them taking on multiple classes. It's actually lower than that, but that would be their full workload. But on top of that, we also assign each and every student a guide. And a guide is very integral to our model. Like I said, they'd be like a coach or a TA, and they help students stay on track. And that's a ratio of about 10-1 to 15-1. So that guide helps make sure that the students are motivated, that they understand what their resources are. Those are offered on site. As I mentioned, we've already partnered with multiple facilities to be able to provide those. We've been able to partner with over a dozen different guides to make sure that they're providing the support for our students. So as I point out here, we have 11 FT or full-time guides. That's actually 22 part-time guides, because those guides work for 20 hours a week. So 22 there. We have an additional 5.5 instructors, and then an unlimited number of master teachers, where we have the pre-recorded content that's available for all of our students for all of the grades that we're planning on serving. In addition to that, we have special education on top of that, as well as, like I mentioned, the administrative staff. So again, going back to that point as far as do we have the staffing? We have, like you mentioned, we have a very talented leadership team that's been able to vet and hire and partner with all of these different staff members to ensure that every student receives the quality and the attention that they need so that nobody falls through the cracks. Of course, our top priority is making sure that students, especially disadvantaged students, as I point out, as far as the 5 different points in the rationale, as far as why we're requesting this change, we really want to make sure that our students and our families are better served, as well as all of Arizona's students. And we believe that we have the ability to do that. Back to President Lee's point, as far as this being kind of unique or unprecedented, as I mentioned, I've gone through and I've reviewed all of the applications, and typically, as far as the growth and the way that the school actually reaches their enrollment cap and their grades, from my understanding, that's typically left up to the school. That the board approves the model that was presented in the TRP as well as in the application, and then the way that they continue to work with the board staff to be able to achieve that. In the TRP and during that interview process, the question that came up is, what if you fall below your year 1 projected enrollment numbers? And we spoke at depth about that, as far as, look, this is a very, very conservative number. As I mentioned at the very beginning of my opening comments, it's not meant to be a cap or a ceiling, but rather a floor, kind of a break even, as anybody who is creating a performer or a business model, as far as saying this is what we anticipate we can hit, but we'd like to go well beyond that. And we spent quite a bit of time talking with the TRP as far as saying, we anticipate going well beyond this, and we are confident that we can do so. So that was something that we discussed, as far as saying, look, as you can see, we are planning on a very soft launch, but we are confident that we can go beyond that. We have a very agile model that can quickly scale up or down based off of need. And that's where we're at right now. I think limiting us to just those 2 grades and that narrow range of students, which wasn't our understanding. And from what, like I said, what I've mentioned, it's not typical of how it's normally been approved by the board, nor what we understood through the application process, that would really, I think, be detrimental to our operations, whereas there would be a tremendous amount of gain for us to be able to serve those additional students in year one with very little to lose. I mean, ultimately, and I think as far as the board goes, they deserve credit for this. I think Arizona is the #1 in the country as far as percentage of charter schools, as well as I think there are 4 out of the top 5 high schools in the country right here in Arizona. And the reason for that is because the board has allowed school choice to excel, that as parents are able to choose, that schools compete, and as schools compete, that schools get better. And that's really what we're asking, is we're asking for an opportunity to be able to serve the students that are already interested in attending. And as I mentioned, we scored a perfect score on our AOI for all the grade ranges we're asking for. We scored a perfect score on our curriculum samples for all the grade ranges we're planning on serving. The TRP approved us to be able to serve these grade ranges. And as was outlined, of course, that's what they approved for that. But we aren't really asking, like I said, for a substantive change, more of just an administrative change as far as how we approach the timeline that we had outlined. We were looking at starting in year 2 versus year 1 because we never did use that planning and development year.
Right. I appreciate those comments, Mr. Kellis. I just know that in December, had we known that you were doing K-12, we would have asked different questions and maybe probed in a different way. And unfortunately, when you come back with with the change like this and we have no evidence or no data to back it up, we kind of miss out on that opportunity to really ask questions from a K-12 perspective. And this being an amendment request versus seeing your new charter application, we've kind of had those discussions already. And I guess that's my concern. I personally don't have a concern opening it up 7 through 11. I think obviously if there was some miscommunication or maybe some misunderstanding, that I could see, because we did have an opportunity to discuss and have those questions from 7 through 11. And I would also be inclined to even allow some more students in there for those same reasons. I do have a question though. On your new plan, it says that you're going to have 5.5 subject matter experts for 1st through 12. I find that just concerning. So I don't know if you could speak to that. And these are the type of questions that we would have asked had we known that we were kind of vetting you as a 1 through 12 in that year. So you have 5.5 subject matter experts. And I think just, I have expertise in the high school arena. You would need that just for the high school. So can you maybe give me the breakdown of what you're considering a subject matter expert to be, and let me know how 5.5 teachers can be that for 1st through 12.
Sure. And just to clarify, subject matter experts are what we're calling a master teacher. So those would be unlimited. We actually have hundreds of those that have been captured through our curriculum samples that are available through our software. So we've partnered with Acellus. We've partnered with quite a few different curriculum providers where we have those subject matter experts. What that's referring to are instructors. And the primary role of an instructor is to oversee the grading process and to facilitate the online communication that happens in the discussion forums. So where those have a 60-to-1 ratio, that's what the 5.5 would break down to for 330 students, really what they're overseeing, because they have the subject matter experts, which are the master teachers, as well as the guides, which are the on-site support that are about 10-to-1 with a ratio. Right in between there, you have the instructors. And like I said, their primary focus is overseeing the data, the student performance, the grading of the assignments and the materials, and then responding and helping students with participation posts throughout there. So, I mean, you mentioned you've had experience at the high school level. I know that this is becoming more common. As I was a dean for one of the largest universities in the country, and we worked a lot, that was a number that tended to work very well for instructors. It was actually much higher at the higher ed level, but we're wanting to give students more attention at that level. So that's what that 60-to-1 would be for the instructors. Hopefully that answers the question.
Let me actually clarify, because not quite. So I'm looking at, you have 5.5 teachers of record. Is that correct? Not hundreds of teachers of record. You have 5.5, you'll have 5.5 teachers of record for your platform, right?
Correct.
Okay. So those 5.5 teacher of records, for example, how many of them have the correct qualifications for high school math?
Got you. Yes. So of those 5.5 teachers, and that's one of the things that I mentioned, we are leading into the high school. So we plan on only doing 1 year of high school in year 1. And even in that, at a reduced number of students. But I'm just looking here at my staffing plan. You can see that for 9th grade, we have a half FTE for an instructor. And then you can see there on the narrative, at grades 1 and 2, we just have a quarter FTE. So we'd have one teacher that would oversee the cluster of first, second, and third for those students, because again, that's not very many students that we're planning on serving in those younger grades. Although we do have parents that are interested in having their students attend at those grades. And
So
then in 4, 5, and 6, we have just 2 teachers that are overseeing that, along with, as I mentioned, over 22 guides that are overseeing that.
Right. So in the 9th grade, I mean, just focusing on 9th grade, because that is something that you want the approval or that you currently, I believe, are approved for, or for next year, you're approved for that. So you have a half a teacher that's essentially, so do you have any teachers that are qualified, for example? So like freshman year, you would need a highly qualified teacher, or appropriately certified, I guess, if we're using it properly. Biology, US history, math, and what am I missing? English. So you have a appropriately certified teacher of record in all 4 of those, with a half teacher.
We do, yeah. And part of our, and in response to that, part of our requirement in our application, or one of the things that was a differentiator, is that we do not require our teachers to be certified, as it's not required for charter school teachers. Although we do have teachers that are very, very experienced in those areas. And we intend to build that out for our high school as they continue to grow. But again, with our curriculum, we have teachers, and I can pull that up, and I apologize if this is going too long, but we do have a lot of detail with a lot of experience with all of our master teachers that are able to oversee that process. So the direct instruction, which is typically what we think of as far as somebody who is certified and qualified to be able to oversee that content, they are extremely well vetted and very certified in all of the subject matter that they're teaching. And then for those, yes, we do have teachers, 2 of them that are highly qualified, that have taught math and science. And then the other one is English language arts as well as history. So they are certified in those subjects, and they would be able to overlap and help with those grades, again, with the instructor role overseeing primarily the grading and the facilitation of the discussion questions in that regard.
Okay. So board members, I guess we probably need a comment to see which way this, I'm sure if I asked for a motion right now, there might be confusion on what the motion needs to be. So I guess I'd like to hear from some other board members of just what their thoughts are in regards to this. I do still feel nervous about doing anything than what was presented to us and vetted by the TRP. I do feel comfortable, with increasing the grade levels that, we would have had you do regardless, that 7 through 11, and getting up to that 300 student enrollment, which would take care of that 200 pre-enroll list that you had. But I'd be curious to see if any of the board members were more inclined to do the 1st through 12 grade starting.
Madam President, this is Ashley. If I may just clarify for the record, I want to make sure it's really clear to the board and to charters as well that are listening in what the historical precedent has been in situations like this and for other expansion requests. So for new charter applications specifically, when they come in front of the board and they have that 3-year plan, the executive director in the past has provided flexibilities within that 3-year plan. So you're absolutely correct. The 7 through 11 grade levels for this request, and then also up to that 300 enrollment cap. In the past, though, any deviation from that 3-year plan has not been approved. It has been very clear that that is what is approved for the first year of operation until we get additional documentation and show the successes of that school, and they can present that information to the board for your consideration. With regard to the enrollment cap, this situation is a little bit different than in previous years, because this is the first time that the board actually did put that enrollment cap in the motion language. So the board specifically indicated that slow growth from 60 in the first year and then 300 in the second year. So I just want to make sure it's very clear that the 7th through 11th grade and allowing the school to increase from just 7th and 8th in the first year to their full 3-year plan for to serve up to 11th grade would be consistent. And then allowing for that 300, but there has been no other deviations and no other approvals. The charters although their charters are approved, it still is an administrative internal control process that has been done in the past and has consistently been utilized in the past to make sure that charters stick to their first year, or their 3-year plan for their first year of operation.
No, thank you, Ashley. And I think I guess maybe that's my point. And when, going back to your sports reference, when teams call an audible, typically those audibles are only successful after practice and practice and practice. And so they're not necessarily, while they are changing on the fly, it's a plan that's been in practice for a long time. And that's my fear here is that, if this was approved in December, at the earliest, this was on your radar, January, and that there just hasn't been a lot of time to really do a complete shift. And that's assuming you guys change your minds the day after you were approved. And again, it's just not, the precedence isn't there. And I always get nervous to do anything outside of that without strong evidence. So board members, I guess, if you guys want to give your thoughts.
President Lee, I will say that I agree with you, and also say this board has been consistent with following what we've approved. We've had other schools come back to us fairly quickly after board action. And this, what we did back in December, we did for a reason and based on the packet from the TRP and everything that was in there. And we did for probably, and I need to go back and look at all the stuff, but for good reason, put that in there, the limits. And so I would stand by our original board motion back in December. Thank you.
And President Lee and Member Swanson, if I could just make a comment on that. I do agree that this is outside of the norm. At the same time, with what we're facing right now, we're looking at over 500 other charters that are going to drastically change within a matter of just weeks, if not months, the norm of what they were anticipating by submitting distance learning plans, which they weren't planning on doing, that will likely all be accepted. So right now we are at a stage where a lot of schools are making some adjustments to be able to serve the families that want to attend their schools. And that's really what we're trying to do. If you'll allow just the 30 seconds to read one of our parents' comments, is that okay? Just so you can kind of understand for that younger grade how it made a huge difference for her to be able to have us serve her through our younger classes.
I think, Mr. Kellis, let us get maybe some of the opinions of the other boards, just because I know, at least for me, I read all of those ahead of time. So I did read all 5 of your letters. And, that is how I knew that you had served grades that weren't within the 7 through 11, coming in. So let's just, for purposes of time, I'm going to get some comments from the other board members first. Other board members, are there comments about where you're at with the motion?
Yeah, this is Rachel Yanoff, and I am pinning a costume on my son, so I apologize for background noise. But I concur that we've been really consistent, and that our consistency has been erring on the side of ensuring that we have a quality ability to know that programs are effective for our students that we are accountable to. And I think with good reason, we have asked for the, TRP process to tell us if that's going to happen or not. And I just don't feel comfortable doing more than we had a chance to work through the process. So my gut would be to remain consistent with what we approved in the December board meeting. I suppose we can secondarily talk about enrollment caps, but I feel like we don't know enough about the elementary process.
Okay. Would board members be comfortable? It sounds like people are wanting to hold to consistency, but would board members be comfortable allowing them to operate 7 through 11 and getting that 300 enrollment cap increase that they would have had that we had already approved in year 2? Because that is something that we have done before.
President Lee, this is Hans. I'm fine with that.
Rachel and Jim, sorry, Ms. Yanoff and Mr. Swanson, I know that would you guys be comfortable with that, or are you erring on the side of wanting a motion that's exactly what it was before?
This is Rachel. I think I'm comfortable exploring it. My question would be back to staff. I don't have a good enough memory right now to know if this is something that would sort of go against precedent that we set before. And I just want to be careful that we're not picking and choosing different winners or losers or any other way it could be perceived. So if staff could help me wrap my head around where this would fall in our pattern, I would appreciate it.
Madam President and Member Yonath, the 3-year was the projected enrollment that was approved in the new charter application for their second year of operation. And because board staff in the past has approved schools to expand in their first year of operation within their 3-year plan, the grades 7 through 11 and an enrollment cap of 300 would be within that 3-year plan and would be consistent with what we've done in the past.
Okay, in that case, I would be comfortable. Thank you. This is Rachel. In that case, I feel like that makes sense. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. I think that we have board members, are there any other opinions before we make a motion? Okay. All right. Is there, and Ashley, can you confirm if the enrollment should be 300 or 330? It's hard to pull up all the documents online, and I just want to confirm that we have the correct numbers.
So the proposed request that the charter is asking for is 330, and that is within their 3-year plan.
Okay.
So I believe what would be consistent with, based on the request of the charter and what has been consistently approved in the past, would be to approve grades 7 and 11 and an enrollment cap is 330 within their first year of operation.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley, for the clarification. Is there a motion?
This is Hans. I'll go ahead and try to make one. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to increase the grade served from 7-8 to 7 to 11 in FY 2021. Would that work?
And you'd also need to increase the enrollment
Yeah,
cap.
I'm just asking if that just in this fiscal year, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and to increase the maximum number of students served from 60 to 330 students in FY 2021.
This is Carol
For the
Crockett.
contract of Freedom Prep Academy Mesa.
This is Carol Crockett. I second the motion.
Thank you, Carol. Alexis, if you'll do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yonath,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much for being here. All right. Rachel, I believe you're up for items. Sorry, let me get to my other screen. Items H2. And I believe, Rachel, we're going to go ahead and have you do one introductory presentation, if you would, for items H2 through H4, so we can take them all as one motion together, if you don't mind.
So actually, President Lee, the way we're going to do this today is the introduction for all of the AOI amendments is essentially the same. So we're going to do one big intro for all 12 amendments. But you are correct. Items H2 through H4 are the same, essentially the same charter holder entity. It's the IntelliSchools group. So you will be considering those three together, and it will be one presentation from the charter.
That sounds even better. Thanks, Rachel.
Right. You're welcome. So the board will be considering 12 amendment requests to add Arizona online instruction programs to 12 charters. Of those that will be considered, some charters were working through the process with board staff prior to the school closures that occurred in the spring. These charter holders are IntelliSchool, PAS Charter Inc., SC Jensen Corporation Inc., Estrella Educational Foundation, and the Grande Innovation Academy. So essentially those are items 2 through 4, 8, and 12 on today's agenda, I believe. The remaining requests actually came after the school closures, as schools found that they were experiencing great success with distance learning models or had concerns with serving students in brick and mortar locations going forward. This group of amendment requests were required to submit their amendments by May 14th for inclusion on today's agenda. All of the AOI requests on today's agenda were reviewed for substantive completeness by Rio Salato, as is our process. This includes evaluating the submission against a rubric and demonstrating proficiency with the AOI program through a virtual demonstration. Each charter holder before you today met the scoring expectations of the rubric and Rio Salato's team. It is important to note that the AOI request does not have staff recommendation criteria. We do rest this on the recommendation of Rio and their team.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And do we have a representative for Arizona Online Instruction?
Yes, for Intel School.
Great. And I'm sorry, could you state your name for the record? I didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry. My name is Mick McElhenney. I'm here with Mary McKay and Eric Siganik.
Great. Thank you guys for being here today. And were there any comments you guys would like to make before we see if there's any board member questions?
No, I guess we'll be ready to take questions.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions? I guess I just have one question. Would you tell us just a little bit about your school and the plan for AOI and just how you plan to be successful? Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've been in, our schools are custom built for at-risk students. So a high percentage of our students are over a year behind in credits, have behavior issues, parenting, adjudicated, number of, run the gamut of issues that affect their performance in school. We've been around for 25 years, trying to figure out how to deal with this population. We're at a point, and we've been largely computer-based along the entire path. At this point, we've kind of been gearing towards this for a while, of making the leap to adding AOI campuses to be able to hold on to more students. We've really improved our retention rate and the ability to bring counselors into the world we live in with these kids. We really put a high expectation on our teachers to understand social and emotional needs before we get to the academic stuff. We spend a lot of our training and a lot of our time on those things. The problem we've had is it never works for everybody, and the elements out there for this highly mobile population have always been difficult. And so kids disappear on us a lot, or kids have to go live with grandma for 6 months. They fall off the map. So we realized that we still want to be a community school. We're not looking to build something really separate from what we already do. What we want to do is be able to hold on and maintain contact and preserve those relationships we have with our staff and those students, no matter what goes on in that kid's life. And that's why we're here today. We think we're ready to make the leap. And we were, as mentioned by Rachel, we were ready and excited about this ahead of time. And then we got a couple months to test drive it. And we've had a nice little run in that time. So I think we're ready.
And can you tell me what are you guys doing at your Paradise Valley campus that's different than your other campuses? Because you have some above average, especially for if we're looking at an alternative school, above average AZ merit data. So and it looks like that's mainly the Paradise Valley School. So what are you doing different there?
Well, it has great staff, and we move staff members around and try to always have a great staff. But I think the biggest difference of what we've seen over there is we've really, probably more than the other campuses, there's been consistency in the staff. The same principal's been there for 6 years, and he puts a high emphasis on the relationship with the kid and retaining the kids. So we measure how we do. One of the big factors that we evaluate our campuses on is our retention rate. One way or another, keeping the relationship going with the kid. Even if they disappear, will they come back? And in that campus, we've seen the last couple of years the highest retention rates we've ever seen. We're talking about a school when I started as a math teacher here 14 years ago, we'd go through 400 kids to maintain an ADM of 100. So we were retaining 25, 30% of our kids. That PV campus is now holding on to 78, I believe it was this year, % of the kids. That difference is enormous in being able to have those relationships and that trust with the parents and the kids so you can get to the academics and start addressing all the other needs.
Great.
So that's the biggest difference.
No, I think that's great. And so how do you plan on kind of creating that same atmosphere in an online, platform, right? Where they may or may not, because it's my understanding they do not have to show up, correct? Because that's kind of, they can do it from home or wherever they are. So how do you plan on kind of keeping that retention and creating kind of that personal connection with those students?
Well, that's kind of going to be the tricky part in some ways, but the main piece would be our counselors. So our counselors play a huge role with the principal on getting to know the student, meeting them. We'll be using GoToMeeting and Zoom meetings and pulling kids into group stuff. We do student council and a ton of field trips and all sorts of activities at the brick and mortar campus. And our intent is to offer the same stuff for our online kids to be able to participate in those when they can, and if that works for them. So largely keeping it personal, checking in regularly, speaking to them about what interests them, getting a little away from the academics at times to build rapport, and having these wonderful counselors we have really tinker away at what's going on and get all the resources and referrals out to that family they need so they can focus on academics.
And did you mention that your current brick and mortar uses a computer program for their curriculum as well, mainly?
Yeah, so we do. Small group is kind of the name of the game for us. We do individualized curriculum. Every kid's path is a little different. They work a number of different programs at the brick and mortar, and then they're pulled into smaller breakout rooms. We find, 5 to 10 kids is generally a really good way for it to work. And we'd be able to continue doing that with the online kids in small groups on group meetings.
And is it that same curriculum that you'll be using with the online students that you've been using in the brick and mortar?
Correct.
Okay.
We're kind of updating it and evaluating it all the time. So it changes each year a little bit. Our departments do a great job of kind of figuring out what's working and what's not, making changes. So it's a little different each year. But yeah, basically the same direction we've been going.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Board members, are there any other questions? Okay. I don't think so. I know it can take a second to unmute, but all right. It does appear to me that they went through the process and that Rio Salado did, give them recommendation of complete. Sounds like that they have been in this platform and have been using it. So I feel comfortable with this personally. And unless I'm assuming with no questions that everybody is probably on the same page. So if there is a motion, and we'll go ahead and take items H2 and H4 together in one motion.
Madam President, this is Ashley. Really quickly, just as an administrative question for this charter, because I know with the distance learning that is happening this year, for the charter, do you plan to implement your AOI this upcoming year, or do you wish to operate under an AOI starting next year after the executive order is complete?
Thank you, Ashley.
We were planning on rolling this thing out slowly anyway. And so I think what we will do is put a few kids in as we go along this year. And okay. Our brick and mortar kids, some of them will be possibly doing more stuff from home. That's all still to be determined, but we'd like to start getting it in place and tracking minutes and everything with it this year.
Okay, great. So if approved, we will mark the contract to be approved for an AOI starting this year.
Okay, perfect. And I am going to ask all the schools this, but I guess I skipped it over you guys because I knew that this had been in the works for a while. You do plan on staying in AOI after this year, right? I think I just want to make sure that charters understand, that they can do the distance learning program. I'm sure they do, but that you plan on, this is kind of your plan moving forward, correct?
Well, correct. To be clear, we plan to continue to run our brick and mortar schools the way they always have for the 20 odd years. And right. We plan to have this additional option for students as an AOI, and we do intend to have this continue indefinitely.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you. Hans, if you want to go ahead and with the motion.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, is this going to be for items H2, 3, and 4?
Yes.
I think that's how I wrote it. Yep. All right. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contracts of IntelliSchool Inc., PAS Charter Inc., and SC Jensen Corporation Inc. to add a probationary online school to each contract under ARS 15808 to serve grades 9 through 12.
Is there a second?
This is Rachel, a second.
Thank you, Rachel. Alexis, if you'll do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All
Thank you.
right. Yeah, thank you guys for being here, and good luck and stay healthy. All right.
You too.
All right. Okay. Item H5. One moment. All right. Academy of Mathematics and Science. Is there a representative here? And Rachel, I didn't skip you, right? It's my understanding that you've covered our intros, correct, for the rest of these items?
You are correct. You
Okay,
can
good.
proceed.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there a representative?
Yes, I'm here.
And could you state your name for the record?
Kim Chaika, co-CEO, Academies of Math and Science.
Great. Welcome, Kim. Do you have any comments for the board?
Sure, I'll give a quick introduction. So of course, last year we were all baptized, having to come up with instructional models that none of us really anticipated. For us in particular, we've been both considering the expansion to a high school in addition to an AOI over the last couple of years. So this really just accelerated the progress for us. We've generated significant waiting lists over the last couple of years of our growth. We've been total in operation for over 20 years, but over the last few years, we've generated between 25 to 100% of our enrollment on waiting lists. So we've doubled in size over the last 2 years, and over the last 2 years before that, we've doubled as well. So we've continued to demonstrate student demand throughout that growth. As a network, we still outperform 90% of nearby schools, looking at our network average across all of our campuses that we serve, this year being 7 and this upcoming year 9. And I'm happy to kind of answer any questions that you all have regarding our school model or our proposed AOI program.
Yeah, this is Mary Ellen Lee. I'm just gonna maybe ask you the same question I'll probably ask all the charters here today. I've had the privilege of walking some of your campuses, and one thing that I love about your campuses is that they do create this sense of community, and you see that in the teachers and the students. So talk to me about how you're going to create that with your online platform.
Sure. So first of all, when we built out our AOI, the first thing that we thought of is how do we replicate and transform the practices that we already have across the existing school sites. So intentionally building culture from the very first day with the students and parents, starting out with summer with opportunities for parents to participate, in this case, in virtual, or when we resume, the ability to meet in person as well, giving parents the option to come in person to an orientation about the school year, meeting their teachers, staff, and everybody else. Within the first week, we'll continue to do the same thing that we've done with our students in brick and mortar, building classroom culture, expectations of what it means to be an AMS scholar, and behavioral expectations. Parents are really cued in on that, and we communicate with them everything that's required of their students up front through commitments to success, kind of guiding document that we use for bringing all students on board. We're going to continue the practices that we have within the brick and mortar of lots of opportunities for participating on campus. So we won't restrict, other than, of course, with this year, online students to participate on campus with sports, clubs, and everything else that we do. We will have scheduled PAC meetings, parent meetings that we run through Zoom. We will continue to, throughout the network, every single campus develops a culture calendar, both at the teacher, staff, and at the student level, with how they engage students and staff throughout the year. So that is a practice that the campuses will employ through our PBIS framework. So school leaders will come up with exactly how they will engage students and how they will create that culture on campus. Some things that you'll see will be field trips that we'll continue to do. So some parents will want to participate in field trips that we do similar to the brick and mortar. Additionally, we've got a number of community partners throughout both Tucson and Phoenix metro area that we can continue to leverage and really just use to expand that connection. Students will have the ability to have to develop those interpersonal relationships through structured recess time, lunch time, in addition to generally we do morning meeting times, which function in different ways depending on what grade band that we're talking about. So those are great opportunities to build culture on campus, and that's something that we'll do online. It definitely won't be the exact same, and there are definitely challenges associated with an online school in terms of creating those relationships, but by being intentional around how to create solutions to the types of problems that are created through an online setting, I believe that we'll be able to move past that and create an experience that parents will like at our campus.
Great. And can you mention just briefly how you plan on doing special education services? I read, obviously that you're going to keep with state and federal law, but maybe specifically, how do you plan on, doing special ed services virtually?
So it'll obviously just depend on the IEP and the particular student and accommodation that we need to do. So for the most part, speech can be delivered virtually, and there are a number of other interventions for students that would go in the IEP that we can all address virtually. So we'll hire full-time SPED teachers that are dedicated to that setting that can do that. In the case of some students where their disability could not be adequately met, we really have two options, which is to offer them the opportunity to enroll in person, or also, because this is an AOI program and it is a program of choice, there is a possibility that the online setting may not be the best for every student. So we would be prepared to have that conversation if that were to be the case to parents. But again, because we're not just an AOI, we have the opportunity to provide those students the proper placement and education, whether in our brick and mortar program or our online program.
Sure. And I know that the board, just for clarification, would like to know, do you plan on starting this FY20 or the following school year?
So I think I'll probably have a pretty common answer here. In our initial contemplation, we were obviously proposing to use our AOI rollout this coming year. And we still will market the program for students that want to be permanently enrolled within AMS long-term. But if we are not required to employ the use of our AOI within this year, then we will look to utilize it this upcoming year instead, the following year.
Okay. Okay. All right. Board members, are there any other questions? All right. I think that's a no. Okay. So with that, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Academy of Mathematics and Science, Inc., entity ID 79961, to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades K through 8.
President Lee, this is Carol Crockett. I second the motion.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, members of the board. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you for being here. All right. Next item. Moving on to H6. Is there a representative from American Leadership Academy? can always take a minute to unmute. So we'll just give us 1 minute for all of those watching. Ashley or Rachel, do we know if a representative?
Hi, this is Rebecca Brewer from American Leadership Academy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, thank you.
Awesome, thank you for being here. And before we go to questions, are there any comments that you would like to make for the board?
I do not have any comments, just thank you for considering our AOI amendment.
Perfect. Board members, are there any questions? All right, just some of the same questions, and just real fast is how do you plan on reaching, your parents and students in the AOI platform?
Yes, so initially in the 2021 school year, we plan on addressing the needs that our students have currently. Historically, they have reached to outside resources for courses such as credit recovery or course replacement. And we plan on using our AOI as an option for them to take those same courses, but with our own ALA teachers and the same curriculum that we use here at American Leadership Academy.
Awesome. And so do you plan on running full classes though, like at the kindergarten, first, second, third grade level for your online instruction, or are you just using it for credit recovery?
So actually our application was just for the 7-12. We will be offering courses that are aimed at that target market.
That makes sense. Okay. That's all the questions I have. Board members, are there any other questions? Oh, I have, sorry, one more is just when you plan on implementing. So do you plan on, when do you plan on implementing your AOI? Is it going to be this year, or are you going to delay until next year and utilize distance learning under the executive order this year?
So we would like to initiate the AOI this year for the 2021 school year and those students who are currently ALA students. The following year, we'll be increasing the number of courses that we have available and opening those up to other students who are not only seeking the course replacement or credit recovery, but just an online option for them as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. Is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans Close. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract of American Leadership Academy, Inc. to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades 7 through 12.
Is there a second?
Carol Crockett, President Lee, I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Lee?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on, item H7, I believe BASIS. Do we have a representative from BASIS here? I can see you all, I just can't hear you. Ashley, can we check to see if they're muted maybe?
I'm looking at Deanna Rose. It does not appear that she is muted. It looks like she's unmuted.
Yeah, Miss Rowe, we still cannot hear you. Oh,
can you hear us?
yes.
I apologize about that. Good afternoon, President Lee and board members. I am Deanna Rowe, the Executive Director for BASIS Charter Schools. We sure appreciate your time today. The closure of schools last spring had BASIS teams pivoting rapidly to provide quality remote learning to all of our students across the BASIS network. We were in a constant state of improvement, and we resolved issues as they came up and promoted the best practices that were working well. The feedback that we received from our families was genuinely very positive. With a little distance learning under our belts, BASIS Ed and BASIS Charter Schools decided to explore what a full-time BASIS Charter School could be. The application before you today represents our plans to launch such a school. Given the current state of the state and following Governor Ducey's executive orders, our plans have been revised, and we're opening all of our schools online next month, and at least for the first month. We will transition back to the classroom following health and safety guidelines, and as our families and our staff are comfortable doing so. As we move forward, we will continue to learn from our experiences this year and improve upon what we've been presented in our model in our application. If our AOI application is approved today, our plan is to open MESA online in the fall of 2021. I've got the BASIS Ed team here with me today, and we are happy to address any of your questions.
Great. And just the same question I'm going to have for all the AOIs is, how do you plan on, keeping engagement and having AOI students really kind of be part of the BASIS community?
Absolutely. Sure, absolutely. Thank you for your question. We have really worked hard to make sure that our students who are part of the AOI are engaged and able to participate in after-school activities on campus. We're also implementing an LMS system that allows our teachers to carefully monitor the engagement of the students and the course content that we're preparing. So we believe that between the combination of extracurricular activities, opportunities for interaction with the remainder of the campus, as well as really well supervised teaching, you will be able to do just that.
Great. Thank you so much. Board members, are there any questions for BASIS?
President Lee, this is Carol Crockett. And Ms. Rowe, is BASIS planning to continue online instruction post the pandemic?
President Lee and Member Crockett, yes, for this year, BASIS Charter Schools has launched Families Choose for this school year. So our families will be able, as I mentioned before, we're going 100% online for the start of the school year. When it's safe to do so, our families will have the option of transitioning back into the classroom or continuing online.
Thank you very much.
And I apologize because I think you did actually say this, but I'm just going to ask because I don't remember the answer. I think that's due to having a 4-month-old at home, but I'm going to ask one more time, so I apologize. You are planning, just for the change, do you plan to operate under the AOI this upcoming year, or you're going to do the next school year and utilize distance learning this year under the executive order?
We'll use the executive order this year and open our school in the fall of 21.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Any other questions? Board members? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans Close. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to amend the charter contract of BASIS Charter Schools, Inc., entity ID 91949, to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades K through 12.
Thank you. Is there a second?
President Lee, it's Carol Crockett. I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Lee?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on. We are now at item H8, Estrella Educational Foundation. Is there a representative from Estrella Educational Foundation?
Yes, there is.
Sounds like there's a lot of you. You might have a cell phone on as well, maybe. There's just some feedback. All right. If you would go ahead and state your name for the record.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. There's just some, yeah, there's pretty bad feedback. So I don't know if maybe it could be, if you have AirPods, sometimes those do it versus speaking into your computer.
Excellent. Mr. President, members of the board, thank you so much. My name is Ruben Gutierrez, Chief Operation Officer of Estrella Educational Foundation, authorized representative. How are you today?
Great.
Excellent. Thank you so much. First and foremost, we want to thank you for the opportunity in this very difficult times, uncharted territory. And we're working extremely smart and hard in making sure that we bring school choice to our communities in the West Valley of Phoenix. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right. Now, do we have, sorry, just give me 1 second to pull up your guys' document. The technology takes a minute. All right. Rachel, were there any other comments about this school in particular?
Madam President, this is Ashley.
Yes.
I do need to inform the board, and consistent with our processes, the charter board is reviewing complaints regarding this charter, and those complaints are currently under review.
Okay. So board members, I'm not quite sure how you feel. I'm a little nervous to approve just until board staff has had time to substantiate, some of these complaints. And I'd prefer not taking a vote at this time, whether to approve or deny, but instead table this until board staff has some more time. Ashley, do you think you could maybe have a better idea of these complaints or addressing these complaints by the August board meeting? Or what would be a timeline if we were to table this and, while you guys kind of investigate what's going on?
My hope is to do and get these complaints done as soon as possible. I know we've been going back and forth with the charter for a few weeks here. So I think like them, we want to get these closed out as soon as possible. I can't say whether we'd get them closed out prior to the August meeting, but we can definitely try to do so.
Okay. And are you guys wanting to do, Mr. Gutierrez, sorry, are you guys wanting to do the AOI for this year or for the next school year?
Yes, we do. We want to do the AOI for this year, being and knowing and understanding that the greater need for the West Valley here in Phoenix, Arizona, and having been existing with the brick and mortar since 2016-17, we're getting a lot of requests of online learning and providing those opportunities of school choice to our students, our families, and our communities, and many school districts as well.
Sure. Mr. Gutierrez, what is your intended start date for this school year?
Our intended start date is beginning on the 27th. It's just around the corner. We've been very strategic in making sure that we're getting ready for opening of the school year and getting things in order.
Sure. Ashley, would they be able to operate under the distance learning program? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, do we have time to look at this and to get those, get some more information about the complaints without, if we come to find out there's nothing of the complaints, without hurting them, I guess necessarily, would they be able to open up under the DLP and then they could come before us in August, hopefully with some information about those complaints, and then we could approve it at that time?
Madam President, that is correct. So under the executive order 2020-41, the governor specifically allowed for schools that are not approved for an Arizona online instruction to provide distance learning, and that can be fully virtual learning through submitting the distance learning plan to the board. So yes, they can provide distance learning throughout this entire next school year without being approved for an AOI.
Okay. Board, I'm not sure where you guys are at, but I personally would like to table this just until we can get some clarification on some of the complaints that are in. And it seems like they can still operate and, and utilize the online learning at this point. So that wouldn't hinder them, assuming, the complaints, if they happen to be resolved, that this tabling wouldn't hurt their program necessarily. So I don't know where everybody else is in regards to that. But that would be my ask, is that we table this to the August meeting.
President Lee, this is Hans Close. I'm fine with that. Would you like a motion?
Ashley, do we need an official motion to table an item to the following agenda?
We do, and I believe they're in the reference sheet provided at the bottom. There is some draft language for reference for board members.
Okay. So Hans, I think, yeah, you can probably go ahead with the motion, or we probably would have heard someone jump in.
Okay. I move to postpone the board's discussion and consideration of agenda item H8 until August 10th. Is that right? At our next meeting?
I would request, Madam President, Member Hans, I would request that we bring it back once board staff is done with their review of the complaint, and with the understanding that we will work as quickly as possible to get that complaint closed out.
I see. Right. Just in case it doesn't get done by August. So we're not tabling it again and asking Mr. Gutierrez to show up again just to table. Yeah, I would agree with that. And we still have time for Mr. Gutierrez, to submit the DLP. He just has until the 27th, if that's when he wants to start, or I guess the 26th, I suppose. That's when he wants to start, correct?
That is correct. In order to offer distance learning, they will need to submit a DLP like every other school.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So do you want the motion to state indefinitely or to be reconsidered as soon as possible?
As soon as the board's able to close out the complaints.
I move that the board's discussion and consideration of agenda item H8 be postponed until the board has been able to clear out the complaints against the charter holder. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there a second?
Carol Crockett, second.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close.
Aye.
Dr. Crockett.
Aye.
Mr. Mason.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff.
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Gutierrez, if you have any questions about if there's anything pending or that we're waiting on from you, I'm not 100% sure where we're at, please reach out to board staff, to Ashley, and they'll get that information to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Okay. Item H9, Humanities and Sciences Academy of the United States Incorporated. Do we have a representative?
Yes, we have two representatives, Michael Kurd and
Sue Durkin.
Great. Thank you guys for being here. Do you guys have any comments before we have questions?
Yes, President Lee, Executive Director Berg, members of the board and staff. The mission of the Humanities and Sciences Academy Arizona is to prepare adult learners academically for occupational education, post-secondary education, social responsibility, employability, and lifelong learning through distance education. The Humanities and Sciences Academy Arizona also provides adult basic education, adult secondary education, literacy, and English language acquisition for adults. We're requesting for the addition of a probationary online school, providing a comprehensive program of instruction for grade 12 high school language arts, high school math, high school science, high school social studies through distance education as approved in the charter. And we would like to start that process this year for 2020 if approved.
Great. Thank you for answering that question ahead of time. And could you also just speak to me, I'm going to ask all the charters this, talk to me about how you plan on really engaging your online community, your online, students and parents.
We appreciate that question. Several different ways. The last part of this the spring semester, we had to pivot to serving our students. And as you know, a lot of our methodology is doing in-person discussion through inquiry-based discussion models. So the faculty have developed all the study guides, and in order for students to earn credit, they have to do an in-person discussion with faculty in order to demonstrate proficiency with the standards and also demonstrate that they know what they're talking about. We were able to move that methodology over the telephone, and we were very, very successful with that. We did a very comprehensive outreach to all of our students over the phone, because a lot of students that we serve at that point in time didn't have necessarily access to computers, but they did have access to technology. We did have quite a bit of students that did have access to technology, though, and when the opportunity came about to apply for this AOI application, we put the focus on grade 12 and also for students that did have the resources to do that. But in addition to the telephone outreach, we use several different learning platforms, including GradPoint, the American Heart Association, Basic Life Support Certification, the ACT Work Keys National Career Readiness Certification, as well as the Paxton Learning. And we're able to provide opportunities for virtual learning and communications through those platforms with our prospective students. In addition to that, we provide the Encyclopedia Britannica online for students to do research work as well as virtual learning that way as well.
And why just grade 12?
When we set up our schools in 1997, it was based on census data that said within a 10-mile square area of downtown Phoenix, there were 40,000 students that were able to earn their high school diploma that were not in school or didn't have a job. And so we set up our schools, our brick and mortar schools, initially to serve that population. We believe that it's an underserved, underrepresented population that have the opportunity to attend school, and we do a great job at serving those adult learners. So we feel that the landscape right now has only increased the amount of students that need these services, and we feel that grade 12 is an opportunity.
That's great. And just looking at your guys' scores, it looks like, yeah, you guys are well above kind of that average for that alternative environment. And are you currently in your brick and mortar? Do you use the same platform that you're going to use for the AOI? Do you use like a computer-based curriculum as well?
Yes, we've been using the GradPoint platform since 2014. We've been using the American Heart Association since 2016. We've been using the Rosetta Stone learning platform since 1990s. We're very familiar with how they operate. We've adapted some of the content that's provided to tailor it to our particular population and our student needs. And we also as a way to determine that, we also have students take CLEP exams related to that, and they do very well based on the outcomes of the curriculum that they've gone through.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Board members, are there any other questions? Okay, and just to clarify one more time, you are planning on starting this year and not doing the executive order this year, is that correct?
Well, our brick and mortars will do the executive order. And if this gets approved, we will start operating this as a distinct AOI school, an additional AOI school. But our brick and mortar campuses will continue offering opportunities for students who want to take advantage of them there.
Okay, and so, but you do want the AOI school this year as well. Then you're going to do both, correct? Yep. Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans Close. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Humanities and Sciences Academy of the United States, Inc., to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grade 12.
Is there a second?
This is Carol Crockett.
This is Rachel, a second.
Oh, I think Rachel got that in before you, Dr. Crockett. So we'll give that one to
Right.
Rachel. She like snuck in there. All right, Rachel, a second. Is there Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you for your time. All right, moving on, item H10, do we have a representative from Kaizen Education Foundation, DBA Mission Heights Preparatory High School?
Yes, we do.
Awesome, and if you could state your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon, President Lee, Vice President Close. My name's Michelle Kay. I'm with the Leona Group. I'm also the charter representative for Mission Heights.
Great, welcome. Do you have any comments before we have board questions?
Yes, the Leona Group has been operating high schools since 1997. We currently operate 14 alternative schools and 3 traditional schools. Our free and reduced lunch population is 77%, just under 11% SPED and 9% ELL. We have always believed very strongly in the importance of relationships and those personal connections with students. However, like so many through this process, we found a subset of students that had actually done very well in this environment. And so this is something we'd like to continue to offer our students as an additional support and safety net as they pursue their high school careers. Our intention at this point is to utilize the executive order for the current year, and then for the 21-22 school year, operate the AOI.
Great. And talk to me, I mean, in your population, particularly, talk to me about engagement and how you plan on doing that through the online platform with your students and parents.
So especially for this year, we intend that this is Mary Berg speaking, Vice President of Academic Support Services for Leona Group. So what we intend on this year is our students primarily are going to be students that we are already serving, and we're looking forward to be able to keeping them with teachers that they know and they're used to. We are watching participation online very closely. Our goal is if we don't see students participating within a 2-day frame window, to start reaching out to them immediately. As we've discovered, the sooner that we can get a student back on track, the better they do. In addition, all services offered by the school are also going to be offered to the online students. As far as clubs, activities, online students are absolutely able to participate in, and services such as academic counseling, social work services, as well as standard academic services will also be available to these students.
Thank you for that. And just even the specifics, I think it's so important, especially I think with any student, but it can tend to be forgotten in an online capacity to, be checking those check-ins and have a day limit in place. Like you'd mentioned, you're the first to mention what, that specific process is. And I appreciate that because it can be easy to lose a student in an online platform, because it's more obvious when they're not showing up to your brick and mortar. So I appreciate that response. Board members, are there any other questions? All right. And do you guys use the school's PLP platform in your current brick and mortar, or will this be a new platform that you're introducing this year?
We are using it currently.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, great. Well, if there's no other questions, then is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Kaizen Education Foundation, DBA Mission Heights Preparatory High School to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades 9 through 12.
And is there a second?
This is Carol Crockett, second.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis, with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item K11, or H11, I believe we're at. Self-Development Charter School, Inc., DBA Self-Development Academy. Is there a representative?
Yes, hi.
Hello.
My name is Sammy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And if you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Sammy Majid. I am Chief of Schools at Self-Development Academy.
Great. And do you have any comments for us before there's board questions?
Yes, just a quick. Thank you for the speedy process in reviewing these applications. We also appreciate the opportunity to provide Arizona citizens with our online curriculum. The unfortunate reality of the coronavirus bore the fortuitous creation of our online program. We've been able to continue our advanced and individualized education. We can now provide students live one-on-one instruction, learning materials personalized to each student, and diverse courses, including in the future the capability of promoting students onto 9th grade with concentrations in certain subjects, in math, science, or performing arts. Recording videos has allowed us to amass an ever-growing library of courses. We are grateful for the opportunity to provide an education to at-home students on par with our individualized and advanced curriculum we have been providing for 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And just, do you plan on using the executive order for this school year, or do you plan on wanting your AOI for this school year?
We will be using the executive order as the pilot for to see if we will continue the online program next year.
Okay. Thank you. And just same question I'm going to ask all of you guys today, because I just think it's so important, is how do you plan on reaching and kind of really engaging your online students so they feel a part of, Self-Development Academy versus any other online program?
Oh, okay. I've been wondering what reach meant, so now I get it. Right at the right moment. Okay. We do provide a very individualized approach, and what the online process has been able to do is it's been able to remove the teaching to the students. And in fact, now, because we can separate the process of instruction from student learning, this frees the teacher to actually engage students more. So we actually, so students now receive either one-on-one or small group tutoring by teachers. So every student has a personal relationship. We call them academic advisors, because every student has this personal that is created at the brick and mortar institutions. Aside from that, we plan to do very social emotional activities to help the students bond with each other and with students outside outside the online curriculum. And so even between schools, so students that are at home that are say Phoenix campus students can bond with their fellow classmates. The opportunity to. So these are just some of the ways in which we try to really break the barrier of
Right. So are you guys using this platform now, the online platform that you plan on using, or will this be your first time using it with your students?
We started a remote learning last year at the end. We started using Google Classroom, and now we have we tried to make things, tried to improve things as much as we can in the time. So what we started to do last semester.
Great. No, thank you. Okay, board members, are there any questions? Okay. If not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans Close. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Self-Development Charter School, Inc., DBA Self-Development Academy, to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades K through 8.
Is there a second?
Carol Crockett, second, please.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you guys for being here. All right, item H12, is there a representative from the Grande Innovation Academy?
Hi, this is Patty Messer.
Hi, Ms. Messer. Do you have any comments before we have questions for you?
Sure. So Grande Innovation Academy started looking at the online component last October before COVID. Part of our thought behind that is we have some students, we're located in Casa Grande, so we have some students that are living and going to school here with us, but they need to get to the Valley for either music lessons or sports, gymnastics, so kind of furthering their gifts and talents. And they were needing to leave, contributed to our absentee rate because they were leaving, 2:30, we're a 4-day week, we go to 4 o'clock. So part of it was to be able to meet those needs. And then as we, obviously the spring hit us, we realized that there was much greater need than just those kids that needed to leave Casa Grande to go somewhere else for more training of some sort. And then like somebody else mentioned, of course, in the online platform, we realized that some kids really flourish. And my staff did an amazing job in the spring with that shutdown on maintaining that contact and creating that, continuing that community feeling via distance learning. And I think that's the only opening comments I have.
Oh, that's great. So talk to me about, what did you do or what are you going to do to create that community, feel with your distance learners with this model?
So our program director will be, our platform that we're using, as mentioned in our amendment, is Edgenuity, and our program, GIA staff teachers, program director will be working with the Edgenuity teachers weekly to monitor the progress of students and if any interventions need to be put in place and parents contacted, that type of thing. So GIA is going to be involved in that communication with them. The other thing too is our counselor is going to create sessions. So either they could be individual sessions with students or they could be kind of a group session and working with the parents on arranging those for that social emotional component as well. We've also encouraged all of our parents who are choosing to go online that they are welcome at, if and when we can have family events again, any extracurricular clubs and sports for our middle school, any of those things, once they get up and running again, that they are obviously welcome to join any of those extracurricular activities.
That's great. And you said that you used this program with your learners at the end of last year as well?
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit just about, because I'm just looking at your guys' school portfolio. I see that students, one thing we like to see is this, your 1 year, 2 year, 3 year phase students. And because your data, your passing scores are a little below the state average in math and ELA. They're not in science. In fact, they're above in science, but in math and ELA. But a couple of things we look at, I know, is one is growth, and it does look like they are increasing. You were a D in FY18, a C in FY19. Obviously, we don't have test scores for this year. And so when we don't have that information, we do look at that 1, 2, and 3 year FAE, and it does look like students are consistently increasing with you as they stay with you. So do you have any concerns just about implementing a new program when maybe the test scores, while they're increasing and while students are doing better with you, just aren't quite hitting what the state average is?
I don't have any concerns. When we went for our enrollment cap this past spring, we had shared Galileo growth, and obviously nobody had the AZ merit growth, but our Galileo growth was on target, our February benchmarks, to really, to show that growth on AZ merit. We don't have that, but we have seen consistent growth, and I don't have any hesitation going to this, introducing this online component because of our solid leadership team with our online program director and our academic coaches, working with the Edgenuity side of it, plus classroom teachers.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions? Okay. With that, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract with the Grande Innovation Academy to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades 4 through 8.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Ms. Messer, I don't know if I asked this question. I apologize if I did. Are you starting online this year? Or are you going to do the executive order this year and want this for the following year?
Executive order this year.
And sorry, was that, did we make that statement, Ashley, in what Hans just stated, or do we need to re-say that?
No, that's okay. Hans
Okay.
can continue.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, thank you so much. All right. Is there a second?
There's a second, Carol Crockett.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis with the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yana,
Aye.
President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, board members.
Thank you. Okay. And I believe this is our last one. The PAIDA, I apologize if I said that incorrectly, Academies, Inc. Is there a representative?
Yes, Dr. Windsor here, and I've got Ms. Garrison here and Ms. Mendonça with me.
Great. And do you have any comments before we have questions?
Yes, I can't see, am I on there? Never mind. Yes, in March when the pandemic started and we had to close down, we immediately began to understand and figure out this online platform. And it had great benefits over the fourth quarter for us. We began to understand which of our scholars, first of all, really thrived in an online platform and which ones didn't. Our teachers began to understand how do we do a blended learning model to make sure we're involving the technology better in our learning platform. We were able to set up a system to identify which scholars weren't logging on, weren't engaged, and we're able to really dig into those and activate a contact system to where even with one scholar, I went to their house to see if everything was okay because nobody had heard from them. We have many, we just put out a survey for our families before we knew about the August 17th situation. And as of Friday, we have 89. So today it might be over 100 families who would really like to be online. That's what their preference is. We are planning on, we would love to have an online platform permanently. We'd like to start that this August right away. But we'd also like to do the executive order because there's some of our scholars who they just want that relationship with the campus and be right here. And as soon as we're able to get kids back in the campus, they want to come back. Ms. Garrison has some comments about how to keep the culture of our community on the online platform.
This is Victoria Garrison. So just answering the question about, how do we keep our students involved in our culture? So we're integrating our online students into our whole person culture of leadership, culture, and academics. Each student in our online program will have a success coach and a mentor who will help facilitate that whole person development. So we're a Leader in Me school, a 7 Habits school, so that culture is integrated into the online school as well. They will have the same opportunities as our brick and mortar students to build leadership skills, develop leadership notebooks, and connect with their success coach to reflect on their personal growth and development. So that same paradigm of whole person development. We'll also make sure that all of the extracurricular opportunities that are available to our brick and mortar students are also available to online students. We'll have frequent and regular communication and check-in with their teachers and success coaches, and on-campus opportunities open to online students as well, including when things are safe again to do these types of things, field trips, internships, et cetera, in terms of integrating them into our culture.
Great. No, thank you for answering the questions you knew we were already going to ask you guys. I appreciate that. So I do have a couple of questions for you. Maybe the first is why high school? So it's my understanding you guys are operating as a K-8, but you're actually asking for K-12 for the online academy.
Well, we're authorized through 12th grade, and we just wanted to do this once. I didn't want to then come back later on and go through the process again.
I'm kind of, this is treated a little bit differently just because so far the prior schools have been asking for, grades that they've already been operating in. And so we have, for the most part, and so we have data for that. And my concern is high school is kind of its own animal, and then to do online is its own animal.
Well, we wouldn't offer it to the 9th through 12th this year anyway. We'd just stick with what grade levels that we're approved to go for. And, next year we plan on opening up the Paideia Liberal Arts Academy and then begin according to the plan that we had already been approved for.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Yeah, and actually makes me feel more comfortable. So I mean, I don't know, board, I guess I personally would prefer the K-8 to be approved and for them to come back and we really kind of dive into the high school portion of the online piece, especially because we haven't been approving schools to go straight to the AOI for grade levels that they haven't previously served. I know that it sounds like you're approved for them, but you also haven't served them, and you kind of, sorry, that is my 4-month-old. If you guys can hear him, I apologize. So I guess board members, I'd be curious on kind of what your opinion is on kind of approving this AOI on grade levels that haven't been served yet.
President Lee, this is Jim Swanson. If we can do that, I think what you're saying makes sense, and have them come back and talk about it once they're serving those grades, if that's possible. Thanks.
And Madam President, if I may just clarify, if at this time you're not wishing to approve grades 9 through 12 for the AOI, they would not need to resubmit their AOI request, that we would be able to bring that AOI request back to, that has already gone through Rio Salado, back for your consideration.
Oh, that's okay. Good.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Mm-hmm.
So would that mean that we wouldn't be able to come back for the high school for 3 or 4 years after we've already served 9, 10, 11 or something like that?
No, I mean, you could come back. So I believe it's my understanding you could come back and not have to go and you'd already have a process approved through Rio Salado. Is that correct, Ashley?
Well, I guess what I mean is, so you're saying that we have to have experience serving those already in the brick and mortar before I can come and ask for the AOI?
Sure, great question. No, so I think what we've seen is that we've initially approved an AOI for grades that are currently served. And so what you're kind of asking to do is 2 different things. So you're asking not only for an AOI, but also to allow us to approve a whole nother subset of grade levels. And those are kind of 2 different things. And so what at least I would like to see is that you're successful with the AOI and the grade levels that you're currently serving. And so we'd have that data.
I see.
does that make sense? And then when you come back, even, you know, end of this year, you can say, hey, this is how successful we've been and we feel confident and this is what we'll do in high school. Cause it's just a whole nother, it's a longer process. And it's going to take, I think, at least for me personally, to have more comfortability in that, where I feel very comfortable doing the K-8 right now.
And what do you know what data you would require? Because the AZ Merit might not, is it going to be, do we know about that this year?
So we don't know about that, but you'd need benchmarking data. We would talk about completion rate. You talk about dropout rates that you could talk about by the end of the year. There's a lot of things beyond AZ Merit, especially for online schools, that would be important when talking about whether or not you're ready for high school.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the bigger concerns is looking at your FAE data. I mean, when we look at your AZ Merit data right now, it looks like your ELA is hitting the mark and you guys have trended in the upward position. Unfortunately, for all schools, we don't have that FY20 data, you know, because of the pandemic. And so what I look at then is the FAE scores. And right now your FAE scores are, as the longer students are with you, they're decreasing. So your 1 year FAE passing is 64, and then you look at your 3 year FAEs and it's the 61%. And so that also gives me some concern as regards to when they're traveling up into high school. So that's also kind of where this is coming from.
In our defense, I want to also point out that we do score above, well above 50% of the surrounding schools in that 3 mile radius.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So we're doing a good job. You know, we have one data point that says we're.
Yep. And I think that's why if we're talking about K-8, then I feel comfortable. But like I said, if we're talking about a whole new grade level span, it's just a different conversation, a longer conversation than what it would be for just the K-8.
Sure. So then if I'm understanding, Ms. Berg, that we wouldn't have to go through the Rio Salado and the paying the money again and that kind of thing, just use the same application?
That is correct. We could use your same package. We would just need to go through the request process again, but you would not have to go through another review by Rio Salado. It would not need to pay the fee.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, are there any questions or differing opinions or anything like that before there's a motion made? Okay. Is there a motion?
Sure. President Lee, this is Hans. I agree with you on the K-8, so my motion will be I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract with the Paideia Academies, Inc. to add a probationary online school under ARS 15808 to serve grades K through 8. Does that sound good?
That's great. Thank you, Hans. Is there a second?
Carol Crockett, second.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis, with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yana,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, President Berg. I mean.
It's okay. Thank you for your time. All right. Okay. And it looks like, I believe we got through H's, so we are in I's. So charter renewals. Rachel, you're up.
I'm still here. Okay. Legacy Traditional School Casa Grande and Legacy Traditional School Queen Creek each submitted charter renewal application packages. Legacy Traditional School Casa Grande serves grades K through 8 in Casa Grande with a current enrollment cap of 1440. The charter holder received an A letter grade in fiscal year 2019, but due to being identified for targeted school improvement in fiscal year 2018, does not meet the board's academic performance expectations. The charter holder does currently meet the board's operational and financial performance expectations. Legacy Traditional School Queen Creek serves grades K through 8 in Queen Creek with a current enrollment cap of 1,558. The charter holder currently meets the board's academic, operational, and financial performance expectations. As part of the renewal process, staff conducted a compliance desk review of both charters. Both charter holders were found to be in compliance in all areas.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Are there any representatives here from Legacy?
Good afternoon, President Lee, members of the board. My name is Anastasia Hawkins. I am our Director of Compliance here at Vertex, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have today about either Legacy Traditional Casa Grande or Legacy Traditional Queen Creek.
Great. Board members, are there any questions? Yeah, I don't have any questions either. So if so, is there a motion?
President Lee, do you want one motion for each school for Casa Grande and Queen Creek? Or?
I believe we can take the motions together. If that's okay, I'd like to take them together.
Okay. I move based on a review of the information provided by the representatives of the charter holders and the contents of the application packages to approve the charter renewal application packages and grant renewal contracts to Legacy Traditional School Casa Grande and to Legacy Traditional School Queen Creek.
Is there a second?
Carol Crockett, happy to second.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yana,
Aye.
President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all so much for your time. We look forward to continuing to educate our students for years to come.
Thanks so much. All right. Well, for those of us that are still with us, we are on item J, summary of current events. Ashley, do you have future meeting dates for us or anything else?
So the next meeting is August 10th, and that will be at the regular time. So it'll be at 9 a.m. I do plan to continue to have our meetings be virtual. So we will make sure to send out the virtual or Zoom information for that meeting. But again, it's August 10th at 9 a.m.
Okay.
And that is all I have for you, Madam President.
All right. Well, then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.